Over the content today, I have decided to reimagine a character from my previous years in Dungeons and Dragons. And this one's got a little bit closer to home because it was a character my dad played. That's right. My dad bucked up for one of my birthdays a couple years ago and played in a D&D campaign that I ran for him. I ran a campaign on my birthday for my dad, my stepmom, my wife, and one of our friends who has also been in other D&D groups with me. Now, in the campaign, they seeked out some items that, when combined, released a genie who granted wishes, and he seeked out more power during that during his wish. So what I did is I'm rebuilding him from the moments after the wish is created. Now, my dad played a character called Deerlord, who at the time was an elf. But Deerlord in this reimagining is no longer an elf. Deerlord in this circumstance is a Goliath, a mountain man, brought down into the wilderness for the hunt. And keeping his class the same as it was when my father played him. I will keep him a ranger. He was a level 1 ranger when he played. He will no longer be a level 1 ranger now. After completing the tasks at hand during the adventure, and then also creating his wish, he is now a level 2 ranger, level 1 cleric. And we're going to break that down as we go forward. So, the first part that we need to discuss is why the cleric? Well, my father's wish was for more power. So, I'm going to put him in the position where a god of nature, or a god of the hunt, heard his call for power. And the genie granted him the power in the sense of more strength, more raw ability, which is making him a level 3 character instead of him being a level 2 by the end of the session.
We've had a lot of transfer.
So it's a calling of the god that is actually going to grant him the powers of the 3rd level. So, again, we switched his race to Goliath. Why? The Goliath are naturally mountain men and tribal, and the way my dad described Deerlord was that he lived on the outside of town, and he was the skinner and the furman and stuff like that, which is part of his background in 5th edition now too. But how much more sense does it make that by outside of the town he meant like you had to go up the hill, up the mountain a little bit to get to his house? His view was so perfect that like he could see the tracks made in the winter for all the wild animals, making, you know, and as a ranger and a lover of the hunt, truly appreciating being able to track his prey. Now, as a ranger, he gets to choose a favorite enemy as one of his features, and I chose beasts because the creatures in the woods that are impacting his hunting are the creatures that are going out and killing animals and humans alike. So he's made it a personal vendetta that not only are you ruining his hunt, but you are attempting to take his life, and therefore you are at risk of losing yours. A great little twist on the character, I think. Now, I did make him an Outlander so I could get the Trapper background, but in other scenarios I would just ask the DM to kind of manipulate the backstories so that he could be a Trapper, be kind of sheltered. I don't necessarily think that there's one in the player's handbook, a background that is, that applies better than Outlander. It's just that if everyone was to come out, that was when I would come to the DM and be like, listen, we can make a better overall backstory. Now, Goliaths, for a ranger, present you with the opinion that they need to be dual-wielding up-front fighters, because they get a +2 strength and a +1 to constitution. And one of their racial abilities in stone endurance is they can just shrug off a d12 plus your con mod's worth of damage if they're hit. They can be like, nope, that didn't hurt. And they can do that once a day. That's at early levels, that's pretty incredible. And considering that the ranger at first level gets a d10, so at this point the dice for hit points is 2d10s and 1d8. A d12's worth of shrug off is gonna be close to half of the hit points, if not just slightly under half. That is the third level of the character. So again, when I put all of his stats in, I will max his HP out for 3 levels. But this would be the last level that he would get the immediate max hit points. So Rangers, skills that they have proficiency in are Dex and Strength. Basically, upfront combat and range combat. Deerlord was a archer, and I did not take that away from this character, despite the fact of the +2 to strength for the Goliath. The +2 to strength for the Goliath, I'm still going to make Deerlord an archer. Now, as a player, again, I'm probably hoping that down the line my DM gives me a bigger bow than a long bow, because a long bow to a Goliath kind of looks like a short bow to the average person, because the Goliaths can stand upwards of 8 feet tall with their pseudo-giant heritage. So we're talking about all these great pieces that are going to come into Deerlord. But we haven't even rolled the dice yet, that's the even more exciting part. But soon we're getting there. I want to talk about the skills. Goliaths are natural athletes, so they're inherently going to get proficiency with athletics, which does make this specific build have one less skill, because as a Outlander he also gets athletics as a proficiency. Now, you're not supposed to double up, you're not supposed to get any kind of quirky perk or anything like that, but maybe there's a way to talk your DM into giving you an additional +1 or something to that effect for having not only a racial benefit to it, but also having a background in it. Maybe that's something that you at your table for house rule could come up with, or maybe that's something they play around with later in the game. I don't know. But having athletics, obviously, just because he's a Goliath, most Goliaths I wouldn't assume would be your ranged attackers. They are very barbarian fighter-esque people. But maybe even Warlock. Warlock Goliath might be an interesting build to see. Maybe we'll do that later on. But now, for Deerlord, he obviously is paying attention to nature as per his cleric domain. He has perception, he has stealth, and he has survival. He is going to be the guy that, if the party was gone and it was just Deerlord, survival's not a question. He does survival. He exists to survive. There's no fear in his eyes when he sees the oncoming beast horde or anything like that. He relishes in the opportunity to slay what he believes to be his arch nemesis, or an born enemy, or what have you. It's going to be very, very interesting if he's ever played in a scenario where the woodlands are infested. He would have done well in one of my DM's campaigns, where there was actually a plague traveling through the woodlands that was turning all living creatures into a form of dragonkin. And that would have been fun to see Deerlord try to take down a deer to find out that it was a dragon deer or something like that. But that's the class. That's the classes with the races and the background. But now we're gonna do the meat. This video, again, probably not gonna be as long as my other videos for FIFA because it's focused on the character build here. But we're gonna roll these stats out. Now I'm gonna put them where I want because I have a specific thing I'm going for. As my father was when he made his character. So we're gonna roll at each stoppage from here on in until I get 6, and then I'll allocate them. For the gear for a ranger, because that's the gear you would get for your level 1. I took the leather armor, 2 spears, which would likely be his melee combat weapon and his ranged weapon if he didn't have the bow ready. So like if he had the spear in hand, first dice roll, a 17, 2 6s and a 5, so that's good. If he didn't have his longbow ready and he had a spear in his hand, he's still nearly as lethal. Plus the spear has versatility, so yeah, he definitely would be the one to carry 2 spears as his option to choose 2 simple melee weapons. His heritage would have led you to believe that he would have probably done that anyways. My guy is down and hurt, kind of pissed off a little bit. He took the Explorer pack because that's the pack I always take, and again he has the longbow and the arrows. Now the longbow and the arrows are likely to be his primary form of attack when he's hunting and stuff. But going into a dungeon, he may feel a little bit more comfortable with the spear, but that would be up for whoever's playing the character. Our second stoppage in play, 2 6s and a 4 is 16. I like when I roll well for these character builds because it allows me to do the things that I want to do, i.e. a strength-based race that uses Dex as his weapon, but also can use strength if need be. So Deerlord traveled with Lee, who was I believe Lee was a wizard. That was my stepmom's character. My wife, who has a druid, I believe she actually stepped out halfway through the adventure or something to that effect. And my friend, who I believe was either a barbarian or a fighter, she, the person who plays that character, is notorious for playing a melee combatant. To the point where during a 4th edition campaign, I did a basically thing where they became able to take over new bodies because I had to, and I gave her a spellcaster as her new form, as her secret identity, and she did say she enjoyed it for the small time she got to play it. I obviously didn't force them into making or playing the new characters, but I did give them an option to play both. In 4th edition, it was this was a while ago in these campaigns. This campaign, they had their original character, the character I made for them, or the option to play a hybrid of the characters. With the idea being, because I love hybriding characters in 4th edition, or I did, at least when I played 4th, that if you did the hybrid, you got a special item specific to the combination. In 4th edition, when you did a character that was reliant on 2 classes, it almost always worked way better when you had an item that was specific to the build, or one slight piece of gear that maybe made up for a lack from the build. So I knew that going into how that was going to be played. So only like 2 of them picked the hybrid, and when they realized what they did, one of them was upset because they thought it would only be fair that they got an item for going back to their base character, but their base character had magic items that, because I give magic items out pretty frequently, so I was less worried about that. Here's our third stat. A 6, a 2, a 3, and a 1. I'll reroll the 1, and I got a 5. So a 6, a 5, and a 3 is a 14. Not bad. But yeah, so that was the group he traveled with. He was capable of going up front and doing some melee damage if need be, but he was a good archer. He was good with his nature checks. My father, as a role player, is a very interesting person because he never played D&D until introduced to him by me, but he also participated in a superheroes game that we played on another one of my birthdays and was the star of the show. He built a character that was just miles above everyone else's character. He played it well.
That's a foul, and they'll get a free kick.
Our fourth stat: a 5, a 6, a 2, and a 1. I'll re-roll the 1. I got another 1. I'll re-roll the 1. I got a 6. 2 6s and a 5 is a 17. So yeah, my dad has done very well with jumping into the role-playing community or gaming with me and participating, role-playing well, and also making characters that are well developed and well thought out. I was very impressed. I actually been very impressed with everyone that we've brought in for one-timers. This stat: 3 1s and a 6. I get to re-roll all 3 1s. I rolled a 6, a 4, and another 1. I rolled another 1. I rolled another 1. I rolled a 2, so I'll take the 2 6s and a 4 and get a 16. This Goliath for 3rd level is going to be very strong. But what I was saying was that I have not had a person that's come into Dungeons & Dragons or any of the role-playing games that we've played. Because again, my father played the superhero game and also played... My mother-in-law also played in that game. My wife did not play in that game. She watched my son during the session, but they've done very well with getting into the game and playing well and understanding what was happening when. My friend who DM'd when I got to play in the superheroes campaign was very impressed with how well they did for new people. And my wife, who's not into Dungeons & Dragons at all, is actually pretty much against the whole thing. She thinks it's very nerdy and thinks that it's, just weird people hanging out with weird people. But yeah, she married me. I don't know. She enjoyed it. So she enjoyed the D&D campaign, that is. But Deerlord in that campaign was, my dad's normally pretty brash about his decisions. Last stat: 2 6s and a 5 is another 17. So Deerlord has 3 17s, 2 16s, and a 14 for his stats. And this is, again, based around the dice rolling of 46, reroll once. If I had a camera, I would record it, but he had a chance of having an 8, but he rolled 3 1s in that stat roll, and the 1s became a 6 and a 4. So it's a 46 down the line, or 46 reroll 1s is a strong way to roll characters, but as a DM, if you're not prepared for it, the beginning of your campaign becomes lackadaisical because they can run over a lot of stuff early on. So we have his stats, and now we got to consider where we're going to put him. And I think we're going to take the Goliath racial information into play here first, and we're going to say that one of these 17s is going to strength, making it a 19. Yeah, he can shoot a bow. He's really good with a bow, which will explain one of his other 17s. And we'll explain his last 17 in Constitution. He's really strong. He could use a bow, a spear, or he can use a melee weapon. But you don't want him to, because when he does, someone's going to die. And then we're going to put We're just going to go right down there. 16 intelligence, 16 wisdom, and 14 charisma. It's a huge stat character. Like, he's stacked for stats. He's built for combat, but given that his low stat is a 14, he's also, and that's his charisma, he's also can be a very charismatic person if need be. He's also intelligent and wise. So you're looking at the +3 wisdom modifier for casting spells as a cleric or a ranger, because they're both wisdom based, and he's got a +3 already. That is better than the start of that's just better than the start of most characters. Let's do the stat run. Let's see. 14 and 16 is 30. Plus 16 is 46. Plus 18 is 64. Plus 17 is 81. Plus 19 is 100. 100 points. He's 25 points above stat array. That's amazing. That's the first time I've ever hit 3 digits on dice rolling characters. This is by far the strongest character I've ever rolled. Across the board. 100 points. So, that's really good. That'll make, let's see, the dexterity is going to be a +3 modifier with leather armor. That's only going to give him a 14 for armor. But again, he is pseudo-barbarian-esque in the fact that he can basically ignore 12 plus his con mod's damage, and his con mod is 4. So, let's see, 4 and 4. So, he's got 24 and 12. So he's got 36 HP. And he can shrug his stone endurance can shrug off 16, max 16 of the 36. So almost half of his HP can be ignored in damage. That's awesome. His initiative is his dexterity, which is +3. He has the ability to know Common, Giant, and Elvish from his background and his race. And now we just got to do spells. So we are into the end of this character. His spell ability is Wisdom. His save DC will be 8 + 2, which is a proficiency bonus right now, plus his wisdom modifier, so that's a 13. And his spell attack is the proficiency plus his wisdom modifier, which is +5. He knows no cantrips, well, unless he knows some cleric cantrips. But I'm going to go to spell list for Rangers, because he does get 2 first level spells.
Serie A, Genoa
and
2,
let's see.
Inter 3,
we're going to take Goodberry.
Verona 1,
now,
Fiorentina
as a cleric,
1,
he did
Juventus
get
2,
from his nature
Verona
domain
2,
animal
Napoli
friendship
1,
and speaks with animals
Bologna
as an
0,
immediately
1,
put onto
Atalanta
his
1.
list. And his second Ranger first level spell will
At the top of the
be...
table remain Napoli with 30 points.
I'm going to do Hunter's
In
Mark.
second, Roma with 20 points. In third, Juventus with 18
Now,
points.
what
In
does that...
fourth, rising up
That
the
means
table
that when
are
he...
Inter with 18 points.
He sees a target,
In
whether it
fifth,
be
and falling are
something
AC
he's hunting for
Milan
food
with 16
or an
points.
enemy he
In
sees,
sixth,
he's going to know where you are, and he's going to be able to
Fiorentina
follow
with
you.
16 points.
And given his
In seventh,
survival
Torino with
and his
15
stealth
points.
and his perception
In eighth, Genoa
and his
with
nature
14
abilities,
points. Fourth
if
position,
he's ever
Hellas
put
Verona
onto
with
your
7
scent,
points.
at
Fifth
some point you will
bottom,
die by his
Udinese
hand.
with 8 points.
So that's his first level spells right now are Goodberry, Hunter's Mark, Animal Friendship, and Speak with Animals. The animals that are not being hunted by him, he does communicate with, because this character's whole premise is not around the idea that he kills everything. He does it for conservation, which my dad would be proud of that I knew that. So we're going to finish this video with just going over the background of his character. Everything he does centered around nature has a meaning. And he knows that it changes. The meanings could change because that's how like seasons change. So he knows that when he says something to someone, that may not be the same answer they get from him later, because he is one to change with the seasons. He's very protective of his homeland. He doesn't like people coming in and tearing down the woods he hunts, or coming into the mountains and digging for ore in his mountains. He's very protective of that area. And when he has an issue with someone, he is likely to punch them in the face. His resolution to problems is I hit. And that is Deerlord. Thank you guys for coming and checking out my character creation. I will be coming back on, I think, with more MLB The Show content after this, but I wanted to get Deerlord on the board. So, ode to my dad and a character he played, and I think we'll be doing this again. So till next time, I'll see you Wednesday.